Hey there, sleep-deprived history buff. Tonight, you're not some decorated general or daring intelligence operative marching through victory parades. You're something far more essential, yet infinitely more forgettable. A World War II truck driver, the unsung spinal column of every battlefield, the omitted footnote behind every triumph, and the first scapegoat when supplies arrive late, damaged, or not at all. You'll trudge through snowdrifts, desert sands, and jungle sludge with a payload of ammunition behind you and a transmission on its last legs beneath your boots, all while praying your brakes outlast your sanity. No medals await you, just bone-deep exhaustion before fading into obscurity. Before your engine gives its final cough and the convoy abandons you roadside, do me one small favor. Let me know where you're listening from and what time it is there. I'm endlessly curious about our global audience. For early access to more of these slow-burning journeys into historical oblivion, ad-free audio versions, or simply to support the show, check the Patreon link below. But for now, settle in, get comfortable. Let's begin. You're queuing up, uncertain why you're even here. The air reeks of disinfectant, body odor, and something unnervingly clinical. The stench of bureaucratic order masking its own ineptitude. The guy ahead of you coughs with enough phlegm to drown a kitten, but nobody reacts because everyone's committed to the military's favorite lie. I'm fine. You never woke up fantasizing about diesel exhaust and busted suspensions. Never told your buddies. I hope I get to haul rations through artillery bar fires and sleep knee-deep in mud under a tarp. No kid dreams of becoming the guy who delivers the fuel but never gets to use it. You're here because of a misfiled form, a high school counselor's offhand comment about you being mechanically inclined, because you changed a tire once. Maybe you enlisted. Maybe you got drafted. Maybe you pissed off the wrong drill sergeant during basic training and got voluntold for logistics. The reason doesn't matter. Dozens of paths lead to this particular purgatory, none of them glorious. You're not frontline infantry, not paratrooper material, not tank crew or reconnaissance. You're support, that's the polite term. The impolite term is expendable. Recruiters made it sound noble. You'll keep the army moving, they said, as if that made you part of the actual fighting force. But at training camp, they handed you a wrench instead of a rifle and introduced you to an engine older than your grandma. No combat tactics, no marksmanship, just oil changes, tire pressure checks, and how to hotwire your own vehicle when the ignition fails for the 6th time this week. Some guys in your unit signed up to escape something. Others were promised transferable skills. Many just wanted out of their dying hometowns where the only career options were digging graves or drinking yourself into one. 3 square meals and a uniform that, mostly, fit seemed like a fair trade. They didn't mention the meals would come from cans or that the uniform would stay perpetually damp for the war's duration. Then there were those who never had a choice. Black soldiers got segregated, shuffled into whatever roles the army deemed appropriate, kept away from front lines, buried in logistical operations. The Red Ball Express didn't run on patriotism and good intentions. It ran on the backs of black drivers hauling 10-ton payloads down bomb-cratered French roads at night. No headlights, no recognition. Told their contribution mattered, then ordered to use separate mess halls, separate latrines, to die quietly if necessary. Even among white troops, hierarchy persists. Officers don't drive. Artillery crews don't haul crates. Even cooks command more respect. At least they feed people. But transport? That's where they dump the misfits. The too clumsy for infantry, too smart-mouthed for command, too unlucky for anything else crowd. They hand you a manifest and point at a truck. The training, if you can grace it with that term, lasts just long enough to prevent you from crashing in the first 5 minutes. After that, you're on your own. They show you how to check oil levels, shift gears without horrific grinding noises, and pump failing brakes. They don't explain what to do when your steering column snaps mid-mountain pass. Don't teach mine identification or fuel line repairs at -10 degrees Fahrenheit. Not their problem anymore. Now it's yours. Processing happens with alarming haste. A doctor listens to your chest for 2 seconds before declaring you alive. A clerk misspells your name on paperwork and shrugs when corrected. Your gear arrives in a sack that smells like someone else's despair. Boots don't fit. Jacket swallows you whole. The helmet wobbles when you move, mocking the notion it might protect anything. They assign you a number. Don't ask about preferences. You try explaining you failed your driving test 3 times, that engines mystify you, that you get carsick reading maps. None of it registers. The desk sergeant glances at his clipboard, frowns, circles a word you can't decipher. Motor transport, he declares. Rear line supply. Report to motor pool at 0400. Just like that, your fate's sealed. You exit the tent clutching a flimsy instruction packet and keys that jingle ominously. The soundtrack to bad decisions. No idea what truck you'll drive. No clue if the brakes work or if it's been scavenged for parts repeatedly. Just know you'll be expected to drive it somewhere. Often. And when, not if, it breaks down, you'd better fix it or at least look like you're trying while getting screamed at in languages you don't understand. Behind you, another man approaches the desk. Another name gets recorded. Another ghost in the making. You wonder how many bodies they'll need to keep the wheels turning. Don't ask. Just nod. Thank the sergeant who never looks up from his clipboard and trudge toward the rows of sagging tents in the distance. You'll meet your truck soon enough. For now, you're just another nameless shape in an endless line of exhausted men marching toward the perpetual growl of engines that never fully shut down. You reach the depot at dawn, though time has stopped meaning much. The sun's a pale smudge behind clouds, and everything feels damp. The air, the ground, your socks, your spirit. Mud sucks at your boots with each step. Not the thick, fertile mud of farm country, but the churned-up filth of 1,000 tires and boots passing over the same patch of earth until it surrendered and became soup. You step in something that might be motor oil, might be piss, might be the primordial ooze of military incompetence. Nobody reacts. The depot presents itself as organized chaos. From a distance, rows of tents and trucks suggest military precision, but up close the illusion shatters. A mechanic's profanity-laden tirade at a dead engine provides the soundtrack. A corporal waves 2 drivers into the same parking space simultaneously. A sergeant screams about fuel shortages to nobody in particular. You hear the word rationed more times in 5 minutes than you've heard your own name all week. Shouting isn't anger here, it's survival. Engines roar, wrenches clang, radios spit static-laden half-orders. Men yell because it's the only way to be heard over the mechanical apocalypse. Chain of command dissolves when everyone's equally filthy and exhausted. Officers clutch clipboards trying to look important, but even they can't disguise this operation's held together by baling wire and spite. Reporting to the motor pool earns you immediate invisibility. A line forms that doesn't move. Each man reaching the front gets either redirected, yelled at, or handed incomprehensible paperwork. You watch someone get assigned to a phantom truck. Another gets told he's already on duty despite just arriving. No surprise registers. Systems this broken don't shock anyone. They just limp forward on muscle memory. Eventually, a staff sergeant with 3-day stubble and coffee stains mapping his shirt like battle campaigns notices you. No name asked. Just a clipboard jabbed at you and a bark that sounds like slot 15. You nod like this means something. Where's that? Gets you 3 contradictory points and a retreating back. The driver's briefing tent smells like wet sheep and cigarette remorse. A dozen men slump in folding chairs that creak ominously. Nobody speaks unless absolutely necessary. Some glance up when you enter, then resume studying the floor like it holds the meaning of life. They all look decades older than their papers claim, not aged by years, but weathered like wood left too long in the elements. One man's missing half an eyebrow. Another cradles a thermos like it contains his last will. You sit. You wait. Nobody explains what for. A baby-faced lieutenant storms in, clutching papers like they're his last lifeline, radiating the frantic energy of someone put in charge of things he doesn't understand. He starts reading names and destinations with the confidence of a man praying nobody asks follow-up questions. Some locations you recognize from maps. Others sound like they were named by someone mid-psychotic break. You get assigned a route you never volunteered for, not that anyone asked. Safe enough means it's only been shelled once this week. Priority load could mean grenades or toilet paper. Nobody clarifies. Instructions come mumbled and vague. Deliver cargo. Don't stop. Don't ask questions. You'll be in a convoy, though nobody specifies how many trucks or who's leading. Someone hands you a radio that crackles ominously before dying. Just follow the guy ahead of you constitutes your entire communications protocol. Stay close and hope, the unofficial motto of military logistics. A map gets shoved into your hands. More child's crayon sketch than navigation aid. Jagged lines crawl across what might have once been a cereal box. No landmarks. No compass points. No scale. Someone's penciled a skull and crossbones over one route. You decide not to inquire. Gear distribution happens with all the organization of a yard sale. You get a helmet that's 30% rust, a poncho that sprouted its own ecosystem, and a revolver that may actually be a paperweight. No extra socks. No explanation for what to do when, not if, your truck bursts into flames. A sergeant starts lecturing about brake checks and fuel logs to an audience of absolutely nobody listening. The same conversations echo everywhere. Lost my manifest. Forgot my keys. Found a rat in my glove compartment. Named him Major Squeaks. Finally, something close to your name gets called. You're led past truck graveyards, some stripped for parts, others held together by hopes and spit. Yours technically qualifies as operational if you redefine operational to mean has 4 wheels, mostly round. Paint peels like sunburnt skin. Tires wobble like drunkards. The rear axle moans like a dying whale when weighted. Something unidentifiable, but definitely organic, crusts the seat. The passenger door only opens from outside. You climb into the cab, clutching your sad map and satchel, trying to ignore how the seat springs stab your kidneys. The dashboard's cracked. The windshield's fogged permanently from the inside. The glove box contains 1 bent spoon, 2 cigarette butts, and a scrap reading "Don't trust the chicken" in frantic capitals. Some mysteries stay buried. Outside, the convoy stirs. Engines cough to life like old men clearing phlegm. Men board trucks without speaking. The lead vehicle rumbles forward. A corporal slaps your window. The universal gesture for follow that death trap. No instructions for getting lost, hitting mines, or breakdowns. Just turn the key. The engine sputters like it's considering retirement. For one terrifying moment, silence. Then it roars, angry, uneven, but alive. You shift into gear, feel the truck lurch like a startled horse, and fall in line. That's your entire briefing. Follow. Don't die. And so it begins. Your first convoy crawls through northern France, through being generous. It's less driving than constant warfare against the road, weather, and your truck's apparent death wish. You'd follow taillights if blackout rules allowed them. Instead, you navigate complete darkness. No headlights, no lamps, not even uncupped cigarettes. You steer by instinct and prayer, perpetually 1 second from ditches or rear-ending the truck ahead. Roads narrow into cratered trails winding through fields that still smell of gunpowder. Charred trees stand sentry along horizons. Burned-out tanks and abandoned carts litter ditches like warnings. You pass villages that stopped being villages, just hollowed buildings with curtains still fluttering through broken windows. Church steeples slump like drunkards, silhouetted against moonless skies. They look like tombstones. Shifts officially run 16 hours driving, 8 hours rest. In reality, nobody sleeps. You drive until your vision blurs and shoulders fuse into the seat. Then someone slaps you awake to drive more. The only relief is rotation. Some men drive one-eyed. Others tie wrists to steering wheels. You hear about one guy who kept a fork in his pocket to stab his thigh when drowsy. Everyone's got a trick. None work long. Rules evaporate on the Red Ball Express. Speed limits? Imaginary. Right-of-way? Mythical. You blast through intersections without slowing. If another truck's in your lane, you lay on the horn and pray they swerve first. Convoys reign supreme over everything. Civilian vehicles, local traffic, even ambulances get bullied to wait. Because what you're hauling isn't just supplies, it's the war's bloodstream. Fuel, bullets, morphine. If it doesn't arrive, someone dies. Not that they'll thank you. Not that they'll remember. Most drivers you meet aren't white. The express runs on black labor. Over 75% of drivers are African American men barred from combat roles, segregated into units, and handed the worst routes with the most clapped-out equipment. They call it support, like it's an honor. What it really means is invisible, expendable, useful until broken. They sleep in separate tents, eat in separate mess halls, can't even piss in the same latrines. Given the oldest trucks, the least fuel, the most suicidal assignments. And if something goes wrong, paperwork's already pre-blamed them. Yet they keep driving, keep fixing what they're given. Work twice as hard for half the recognition, knowing when this war ends, they'll return to whites-only signs back home. You ride alongside these men, listen to their jokes, curses, and horror stories over coffee that tastes like burnt uniforms. Some have been at this for months. They teach you to read the road through vibrations in the wheel, to diagnose axle failures by sound alone, show you how to patch tires with burlap strips, how to angle your truck against the wind when replacing a starter in pitch dark. They don't owe you help, but give it anyway. At a makeshift rest stop, just a dirt patch barely wide enough for 10 trucks, a corporal walks by doling out sandwiches, stale bread hugging something gray that might have been meat once. You're too hungry to care. A tall black driver with knuckles like mountain ranges and a laugh like gravel pulls out a harmonica, plays a tune so mournful it makes the trees hold their breath. When the last note fades, he tucks it away like nothing happened, climbs into his truck, and fires up the engine like it's just another Tuesday. Back on the road, the convoy stretches beyond sight. Just endless silhouettes growling forward, wheels grinding against frost and fractured stone. Night air stings your throat like swallowed needles. Windows won't seal, so you cinch your scarf tighter and try not to think about the miles ahead. Your truck's complaining louder now, brakes hissing protest, clutch sticking like gum, one rear tire wobbling ominously. You feel the frame flex on every pothole, which is to say constantly. You're running on parts that should have been retired before Pearl Harbor, burning fuel that smells like kerosene got lonely. But you push forward because stopping means getting left behind. Then the mortars come. You don't see the explosion, just a flash, a sound like the earth clearing its throat, then fire blooming in the distance. The convoy doesn't brake, doesn't even slow. Not your problem. Someone else's problem now. You accelerate instead. Dawn arrives. Or maybe it never left. Time's become theoretical. Your eyes crust with dust. Hands numb. The road finally widens, revealing a depot through fog, trucks peeling off like shedding scales. You follow a sign reading, "Unload here," in paint so crooked it looks drunk. As you approach the gate, your brakes sigh and give up, not dramatically, but in stages, like they're tired of pretending. The pedal goes soft. You stomp harder. Nothing. Yank the handbrake and hear it snap like a wishbone. All you can do is aim for the mud and pray. You skid in sideways, nearly take out a stack of crates and two mechanics who don't even blink. The truck shudders, lurches, then dies with a groan. Steam rises like a white flag. Something metallic clanks to the ground under the chassis. You sit there waiting for the screaming, but it never comes. A corporal jogs over, eyes the smoking engine, mutters "typical," and points at a fuel pump. Refill and get back out there. Return trip's waiting. You open your mouth to object, but he's already gone. Another truck pulls in behind you. The line never stops. The war doesn't pause, and you? You're not here to rest. You're here to drive. Your next assignment isn't Europe. Somewhere hotter, wetter, crueler, where war feels less like clashing empires and more like slow rot spreading across mountains, eating everything in its path. You know nothing about Burma. Didn't even know it was a country, just a shape on a map with a name too soft for what awaited. They call it strategic, call it vital. You'll remember it as mud, malaria, and rain drumming on canvas for eternity. The Burma Road isn't a road. It's a dare, a jagged scar carved through jungle and rock by desperation and forced labor. Winding between Kunming and Lashio through terrain that should forbid vehicles, let alone overloaded military trucks groaning under fuel drums and corroding ammo. The road is barely wider than your truck, rock wall on one side. vertical drop into mist on the other. No guardrails. No margin for error. You thought French potholes were bad. Try switchbacks in monsoons with tires sliding on red clay and visibility measured in insect splats on the windshield. Can't slow down. No shoulders to pull over. Can't stop. The truck behind will ram you. You drive forward, breath held, knuckles white, heartbeat loud in your ears. Not courage. Inertia. Rain doesn't stop. Not for hours. Not for days. You forget what sky looks like. Tents rot. Boots squish. Clothes never dry. Just cling like mildew-coated second skins. Rashes bloom in places you didn't know could chafe. Socks become science experiments. Each night you wring water from your blanket before attempting, and failing, to sleep under its damp weight. The jungle's alive. Not welcoming, just voracious. Buzzes, hums, shrieks with insects that want your blood and fungi that want your flesh. Leeches lurk in mud. Spiders nest in boots. A rat chewed through your rations last night and died immediately. Not exactly a confidence boost for your next meal. Malaria is not rumor here, it's guarantee. You've seen grown men piss themselves from the shakes. Others sweat it out under coats, trembling so hard their teeth chatter in time with the rain. You choke down quinine like clockwork. The fever finds you anyway. You recognize the glassy stare in the mirror one morning. Then there's the dysentery, better left undescribed. Just know there's no dignity in squatting behind a tree while a convoy honks at you. No glamour in combat diarrhea. You ration toilet paper like ammunition. Learn which foods are death sentences. That even clean water isn't safe. You boil everything. Still get sick. You're not alone in this hell. Chinese laborers line the route. Many conscripted by the Kuomintang, handed shovels, and ordered to keep the road clear. Some walk barefoot. Some haul supplies on their backs. You pass without eye contact, because what do you say to men literally carrying the war uphill? They don't salute. Don't smile. Just keep moving. One collapses beside your truck, face first into mud. Doesn't get up. Nobody stops. Allied coordination's a joke. British command doesn't talk to Americans. Americans don't trust Chinese. Everyone blames everyone else for breakdowns, delays, chaos. Orders arrive late or never. Maps contradict. 1 week you deliver to a depot that no longer exists. The next you wait 3 days for a bridge that was finished last month. When it's finally usable, it collapses under the first truck. Your truck despises the heat. Engine vapor locks on inclines. Fuel gauge lies 50% of the time. Guess is wrong the other 50%. Brakes overheat. Wheels seize. You spend more time under the truck than in it, clearing clogged filters, coaxing life from an engine that clearly wants to die. You MacGyver a fan belt from canvas scraps. It holds for an hour before snapping. You grow accustomed to the sound of trucks slipping off edges. Starts with metal groaning. Then comes the scream. Engine, man, or both. Finally, the thud you feel in your stomach. You don't stop. Can't. No room to pull over. Jungle reclaims wrecks within minutes. Vines swallowing metal, trees growing through cabs. By next season, no trace remains. You stop caring about rank. Stop caring about orders. Care only about the road, the wheels, and the 12 inches in front of your bumper. Nothing else matters. One morning, a major flags you down for a new assignment. You drive right past him. He doesn't yell, just watches you go. He understands. By week's end, your nerves are shot, running on weak coffee and damp cigarettes. You dream about being dry, not home, not peace, just one moment where your clothes aren't soaked through. Stomach twists on every rut. Teeth ache from vibration. The steering wheel fights your grip like the truck resents being controlled. Then it happens on a downhill curve, steep, slick, sharper than expected. You tap the brakes. Nothing. Pump them. Still nothing. The truck fishtails. You yank the wheel. Rear end slides, lifts, slams down hard. Front tires catch a rut and spin the whole vehicle like a top before momentum sends you careening into a ditch. Your head smacks the door frame. Metal gashes your leg. The engine sputters and dies. Steam hisses. Rain keeps falling. Indifferent. You crawl out passenger side, dragging your bleeding leg. Soaked. Shaking. Burning with fever. Mud coats every inch of skin. You taste blood at the back of your throat. Convoy trucks pass in slow procession. Nobody stops. Nobody honks. They just keep moving because that's the job. You don't know how long you lie there, minutes? Hours. Long enough for fever to pulse behind your eyes, for leeches to find soft skin. Eventually someone stops, not to help, but to clear the road. Two locals drag you from the mud like another piece of wreckage, dump you in a supply truck headed the opposite direction. From there, blur of bandages, shouted orders, reassignments signed by men who never meet your eyes. After 2 months in Burma, you're transferred again. Welcome to Russia. If Europe's winter was wet misery, Russia's is biblical. Not just cold, but a sentient force that slithers into your bones and whispers promises of your own extinction. You arrive bundled in 3 layers of wool and still feel naked, the wind not blowing but slicing, offering no gentle introduction. Orders wait for you upon disembarkation, printed on paper so brittle from cold it flakes at the edges like ancient parchment. A Soviet officer with a face like chipped granite barks at you in Russian you mostly don't understand, but the message is clear: drive or die. The convoy is already late, already low on everything except frostbite and collective bad temper. You're handed a map with 3 penciled locations, one already crossed out. No explanation. The road, a term used generously, carves through endless white plains, no markers, no signs. Just tire tracks half buried in snow that might lead forward or might circle you back to where you started. The snow is deceptive, smoothing over landmines, potholes, and the frozen corpses of trucks that didn't survive the last run. Trees line the edges like skeletal spectators, some shrapnel-riddled, others splintered by shells. Everything else is white. Still, too still. Your truck has seen better decades. Each morning, the engine protests like you're asking it to commit treason, requiring a small fire lit beneath the oil pan just to coax it into motion. Tires are wrapped in chains, not for traction, but to keep them from freezing flat to the ground overnight. The windshield is a solid sheet of frost. You scrape it with a knife because the defroster gave up somewhere outside Leningrad. You forget what sweating feels like. Fuel becomes your obsession, not just using it, but keeping it from thickening into useless sludge in the cold. It gums up filters, congeals in lines, turns to paste if left alone too long. You sleep with a canister tucked against you like a lover, wrapped and kept near the fire so you can pour it without chiseling. The engines are temperamental at best. Here, they stall if you think about coasting downhill. You learn fast to cover every inch of skin. Exposed flesh grays in minutes. One driver loses half his nose to a smoked brake. Another removes a glove for 10 seconds and returns with fingers the color of raw meat. You stuff newspaper into your boots, line them with straw. It doesn't help. Nothing helps. Cold this deep invades your teeth. Joints ache like they're full of ground glass. Your breath freezes on your collar, forming a brittle crust you chip off hourly just to breathe. You sleep in stolen, shivering bursts when the convoy halts, curled in the cab with boots still on, arms locked around yourself like you're holding your ribs together. Some men lash themselves to the wheel to avoid slumping onto the gas pedal. Others tie cloth strips to their eyelids to snap them open if they droop. You jab your thigh with a pencil again and again just to stay awake. One guy down the line ties a string from his finger to the gear shift. If he nods off, the yank wakes him. It works. Until it doesn't. Communication is a joke. Radios freeze. Batteries die in minutes. Orders are relayed by shouting. Voices muffled by scarves and snow. Sometimes you follow a truck for hours only to realize it's going the wrong direction. Other times, your lead vehicle vanishes into a storm or a crater or simply the horizon. You don't panic. You drive, or stop, or freeze. The options are equally terrible. The Soviets don't coddle. You're given a route and expected to complete it. No escort, no backup, no explanation. Return? Good. Don't. Another truck will come. Eventually. Maybe. You don't speak the language, but misery is universal. Nods, grunts, and shared cigarettes become your vocabulary. The Russian drivers treat you first as a curiosity, then a fellow sufferer, finally as one of their own. Brotherhood forged in frostbite and mutual desperation. The cargo is always vital, always vague. Shells, bandages, rifles, radio parts. You don't ask. It doesn't matter. What matters is moving it. Where doesn't concern you. The roads aren't roads so much as suggestions etched into snowbanks. Half the time, you steer by memory. The other half, you follow ruts and pray the last guy didn't drive off a cliff. You pass wreckage often, trucks blackened by fire, frames twisted into grotesque sculptures, tarp scraps flapping like surrender flags. Once, an entire convoy that never made it. 3 vehicles in a ditch, a trail of footprints leading away before vanishing into the trees. No one speaks. You keep driving. You don't stop for wrecks. Don't stop for bodies. You stop only when your engine does, and even then, just long enough to curse it back to life. The wind cuts through your coat like it's not there. You start forgetting what warmth ever felt like. Your hands stop working right. Fingers clumsy, stiff, slow. One morning, you drop a wrench and spend 5 minutes trying to pick it back up. Your breath fogs your scarf, then freezes there, a crust of ice sealing your lips. When you speak, it's in bursts, more animal than language. Words cost too much heat. Then comes the morning your truck refuses to start. No spark, no turnover, just a dull click, like a dying heartbeat. You pop the hood to find the oil frozen solid in the pan. You chip at it, then give up and do what everyone does. Light a fire under the goddamn engine. Real flames. Real risk of blowing the fuel line. No one bats an eye. That's just how it's done here. The flames lick the truck's belly as you crouch nearby, hands outstretched, less for the engine's sake than your own. Your gloves are stiff, fingers swollen and red. You try rubbing life back into them, but they barely respond. The cold has settled deep now, not just in skin, but in blood and thought. The fire's barely out when a Soviet officer strides up, coat immaculate, boots crunching authority into the snow. He doesn't speak, just points down the road, sharp and final. You look at your hands, still refusing to close properly. Look at the fire. Look at the road ahead, endless and white. Then you start the engine, because there is no alternative. You spend 5 months in Russia. 5 months of ice-cracked skin, frozen engines, waking each morning unsure if your fingers will still bend. Long enough for the cold to become a tenant in your joints. Long enough for your breath to stop fogging. Not because the air warmed, but because your body stopped trying. By the time they pull you off the line, you've forgotten what trees look like with leaves. You've been in the war nearly 2 years now. Long enough to forget what silence sounds like. They don't send you home. They send you south. One day you're thawing diesel with a blowtorch in Russia. The next you're squinting into North Africa's blinding sun glare, standing beside a truck hot enough to brand your palm on its door. If Russia stole your warmth, the desert comes for your water. You weren't supposed to be shuffled between fronts like this. Wrong paperwork, wrong name, wrong war. You just keep ending up where nobody else wants to go. The sea crossing is uneventful if you don't count the vomiting, the overcrowding, and the creeping dread that this next hell might be worse. When you dock, the heat slaps you like an open palm. Not Europe's wet cling or Burma's fever steam, but a dry, biting scorch that cracks your lips by mid-morning and makes your skin feel 2 sizes too tight. You don't sweat here, you leak. Roads are mostly theoretical here. Vast open stretches of sand interrupted by rock patches and the occasional half-buried landmine. Sometimes you follow tracks carved by previous convoys. Sometimes the wind erases those tracks mid-route, leaving you navigating by compass, instinct, and dumb luck. Maps are jokes, outdated, vague, wildly optimistic. Distances aren't measured in miles, but in how many tires you'll blow getting there. Your truck hates the desert more than you do. The engine overheats before you've cleared the first ridge. The radiator boils like a tea kettle, hissing steam every time you idle too long. You check the coolant, gone. Check the reserve, also gone. When you ask for more, the mechanic just laughs. Improvise, he says, too sunburned to care, too dehydrated to fake sympathy. So you do what everyone does. You piss into the radiator. It doesn't fix the problem, just delays the inevitable. That becomes the desert's theme. Nothing works. Everything dies slowly. Sand gets everywhere. Your boots, your teeth, your food, your bedroll. It clogs air filters, chews up fan belts, turns engine grease into gritty paste that wears down metal like sandpaper. You wrap cloth around the intake just to buy a few more miles before the whole system seizes. You clean constantly, but it always comes back. By week's end, the inside of your ears feel lined with gravel. Your socks disintegrate. Your skin rubs raw at every seam. You drink when you can, what you can. The water's hot, metallic, usually full of enough sediment to make you consider chewing before swallowing. You ration your canteen like it's sacred, one sip at a time, swirled in your mouth to trick your body into feeling satisfied. Some days you don't urinate at all. Other days, it's the color of rust. You feel your body getting lighter, not in a good way, but like something slowly drying out. You stop sweating altogether. That's when you know you're in trouble. Sunstroke takes men fast out here. One minute they're squinting into the glare. The next they're stumbling off the road muttering about snow. You see a driver collapse face first into sand. When you pull him up, his eyes are glassy and unfocused. You pour water on his head, what's left of it anyway, and he starts screaming. The heat's cooked his scalp. There's nothing to do but drag him into the truck's shadow and pray. Sometimes they come back. Sometimes they don't. You get good at scavenging. Everyone does. Spare parts are myths. You swap brake pads with other drivers, share bolts, jury rig everything from scraps. Someone makes a fan from ration tins. Someone else carves a gear lever from a broom handle. When a convoy gets hit, survivors pick through the wreckage like vultures, not for the dead, but for usable fenders, belts, and spark plugs. You see a man sob with joy after finding a working starter, his first luck in months. Then come the air raids. You learn the sound of enemy planes long before you see them, that growing whine against clear blue. There's nowhere to hide. No trees, no hills, just you, your truck, and a vast open plain that might as well have a bullseye painted on it. The first time, you panic and try to outrun it. The second, you dive under the chassis. By the third, you don't even flinch, just crouch by a tire and mutter words to a prayer you don't believe. They usually bomb supply dumps, but sometimes they strafe convoys too. Not because you're a threat, because you're easy, stationary, predictable. You hear the explosions before you feel them. Shockwaves hit a second later, sending sand whipping through the cab like a hurricane. Trucks flip, fires start, screams get swallowed by distance. You keep your head down and don't move. Later, when it's quiet, you get back behind the wheel and keep driving. Mirages torment you daily. A shimmer that looks like water. A shape that might be a palm tree. Once you swear you saw a gas station, pumps, signage and all, standing in the middle of nowhere. You blink and it's gone. Your brain's frying. Thoughts move slow like they're wading through syrup. You forget what day it is. Forget where you are. But your hands still find the wheel. Your foot still presses the clutch. Weeks pass. You're still in North Africa, parked in cracked earth pretending to be flat, crouched beside a truck that shouldn't run but does. You're under the hood again, sleeves rolled up, hands black with grease, sand in your teeth, just enough shade from a boulder to keep your scalp from blistering. The sun hasn't moved in hours. Neither have you. You've been here long enough to stop sweating. That's the warning sign. Your body's hoarding moisture like it's preparing for extinction. You patch the engine with wire, torn canvas, and dumb luck that should have run out weeks ago. A cracked fuel line gets stitched with rubber from your boot heel. A belt's replaced with braided twine soaked in oil. Everything's temporary. Emergency fixes on emergency fixes. You don't maintain the truck anymore. You just keep it from dying long enough to reach the next hill. Then you hope gravity does the rest. It's not a vehicle anymore. It's a death rattle on wheels. The frame creaks like an old man's spine every time you climb in. The cab smells like sun-baked metal, sweat, and the ghosts of 100 drivers who've screamed at it. You're just the latest in a long line trying to coax meaning from its rusted carcass. You won't be the last. No one's sentimental about it. The truck has no name, hasn't earned one. The tires are all wrong for desert, treads worn bald, rubber splitting from heat. One's patched with tar and rope. Another reinforced with hammered tin strips nailed in place. A medieval solution to a mechanical problem. There's no spare, just a rim strapped to the back like a taunt. Every jolt threatens to shear a bolt. Every corner's a gamble. You've learned to compensate for the wobble automatically, but you know it's borrowed time. The radiator leaks so steadily it might as well be designed to. You've poured everything in: water, coffee, engine oil, urine. Once, desperately, camel milk. It curdled instantly. You've stuffed rags and hoses, sealed cracks with candle wax, siphoned coolant from other trucks under cover of darkness. Nothing holds. The fluid always finds a way out. You drive with one eye on the temperature gauge, the other on the steam column rising from the hood. It's not if it overheats, it's when. The brakes are the worst. Always the brakes. They don't work when needed. On flats, they're lazy and slow. On slopes, they vanish entirely. No grinding, no squeal, just silence and acceleration. You've tried pumping them, tried downshifting early, tried prayer. Nothing stops a truck this heavy once it decides to go. You keep a rock under the seat as a last resort wedge. There's no suspension to speak of. You feel every pebble, every rut, every wind-hardened sand ridge like the roads trying to climb into your spine. The seat's bent sideways from too many hard landings. The padding's long gone. You sit on a rolled-up blanket that smells like diesel and despair. After every drive, your back screams, your legs cramp, your arms feel like you've been wrestling a wild animal. Because you have. The truck fights you constantly, like it resents human control. The cabin's an oven by day, a wind tunnel by night. Glass rattles and frames. The passenger door doesn't latch. You keep it shut with rope tied to the gear stick. The windshield's pitted and smeared, leaving you half-blind most drives. Wipers don't work. Knobs are broken. The defroster hums uselessly when you turn it. There's no radio, not even a dummy unit. If you break down out here, and you will, you fix it yourself or wait to be noticed missing. That could take hours. Could take days. Convoys don't circle back for stragglers. You know this. You've seen the vultures circling wrecks while you tighten bolts with shaking hands. Once you passed a burned-out truck half buried in a dune. Cab scorched black, tires melted into sand. No one marked it. Wasn't even on the manifest. Today's cargo is marked priority. It always is. You stopped asking what's in the crates after one burst open to reveal spoiled meat packed in straw. Another held only left-footed boots. Another, broken rifles marked salvage. Once you hauled radio parts to an abandoned camp. You're never told what's in back, just that it's important enough to die for, but not important enough to protect. You slam the hood shut and lean against the grill, breathing shallow, hands burning from engine heat. You've used your last spare part. Water's low. Your wrists ache from turning a wrench that should have been retired with your grandfather. You're coated in oil and dust. Your skin tastes like salt and copper. And the convoy's already pulling away. You hear engines rumbling in the distance. That sound says move. Now, you scramble into the cab, kick the starter, and the engine sputters, coughs, then growls to life. Reluctant, resentful. You shift into gear and ease forward, wheels kicking up sand that swirls around the chassis like smoke. You fall into place near the convoy's rear, watching the horizon shimmer with heat and illusion. You haven't slept in 2 days. Not really slept, not the kind that counts. You've nodded off in stolen moments, slumped against the wheel, chin on your chest, boots still pressed to the floor. But every time your eyes close, something yanks them open again. The whine of the engine, the lurch of the suspension, the distant pop-pop of gunfire, real or imagined. You're not sure anymore. All you know is your body is failing in quiet, irreversible ways. Your hands shake on the wheel, not from fear, not from cold, but from exhaustion so deep it feels cellular. Your joints ache with a slow, bruising fatigue that no stretching fixes. Every bump sends pain through your spine like an electric shock. Your legs cramp. Your fingers lose grip. And your head is full of fog, thick and heavy, like wet wool stuffed behind your eyes. Thoughts don't connect. Words drift through your mind like ash and vanish before you can grasp them. You try to remember the last time you lay down and didn't immediately get back up. Maybe Russia, in a barn with broken shutters and frost creeping across the floor. Or Burma, in a pit dug from wet earth where every breath tasted like mildew and rot. You've lost time before, minutes stolen by microsleeps. But this is different. You're starting to dream with your eyes open. It starts small. Shapes at the edge of your vision that disappear when you turn. A face in the passenger seat you swear wasn't there a second ago. A rustling behind the cab when you're alone on an open plain. You tell yourself it's the wind, the heat, the engine's rumble echoing strangely. You tell yourself it's fine, that you're just tired, that everyone sees things out here. You're right. They do. One driver tied a bell to his sleeve so he'd hear it if he dozed off. It didn't work. He died wrapped around the rear axle of the truck ahead. Another kept a lit cigarette between his fingers, thinking the burn would wake him. It didn't. He dropped it, lit the cab on fire, and didn't make it out. You start carrying pebbles in your pocket. When your eyes droop, you squeeze one until your palm bleeds. It helps. Until it doesn't. The road doesn't care. It keeps going. Straight, featureless, endless. A ribbon of gravel or dirt or cracked tarmac that changes only in shade, never in shape. Your brain starts filling in the blanks. You see things that aren't there, a farmhouse in the distance, a man waving a red flag, a telephone pole that turns into a soldier. The heat shimmers bend light into faces, bodies, motion. You blink, and it's gone. Or it isn't. Sometimes you don't know the difference. You start forgetting basic things. How to shift gears. Where you're going. What day it is. You forget your rank, your name, the face of the man who handed you the map this morning. You forget where the convoy started, where it's supposed to end. All that matters now is the truck ahead of you and the few meters of road between you and it. That's your entire universe. If it swerves, you swerve. If it stops, you stop. If it drives off a cliff, you'll probably follow. Your mouth is dry. Your lips are cracked. Every swallow feels like dragging sandpaper down your throat. You haven't eaten in hours, maybe days. You found a stale biscuit in your coat pocket and chewed it until it turned to paste, but it didn't help. You tried drinking from your canteen, but the water was hot and tasted like old metal. You poured it over your face instead, just to feel something. It evaporated in seconds. Your neck snaps back. For a moment, you don't know why. Then you realize you nodded off and hit a rut. The jolt woke you. Your hands weren't even on the wheel. You grip it now like a lifeline, knuckles white, veins raised. You roll the window down and stick your head into the wind, letting the air sting your face. It helps, briefly. Then the tiredness comes back, heavier, more insistent. Your eyelids droop. Your head dips forward again. You try music, a harmonica someone left in the glove box. You blow into it, off-key, again and again until your breath runs out. You talk to yourself. You insult the truck. You plead with it. You curse your commanding officer by name. You tell stories no one will ever hear. About your childhood, about a girl you knew, about how you once wanted to be a teacher. Your voice sounds strange, disconnected, like someone else is speaking through your mouth. Then you see something that stops your heart. A child, standing in the middle of the road. Small, unmoving, hair ruffling slightly in the wind. You slam the brakes. The truck skids. Tires scream. You shut your eyes, bracing for impact, and open them to an empty road. No child, no figure, just dust and gravel stretching to the horizon. You don't know if it was a dream, a hallucination, or a memory. You check the rearview mirror. Nothing. You start laughing. Quiet at first, then louder, until it turns into coughing. Your chest rattles. Your ribs ache. You slap the wheel and keep driving. At some point, the sun shifts. Shadows change. You've been following the same truck for hours. Maybe the same truck. Maybe not. They all look identical now. You can't remember if you've seen this stretch before or if your mind is recycling old scenery like a film on loop. You try counting bumps, signs, turns, but lose track by 10. Your eyes close again. Just for a second. Just a moment. Then you're yanked awake by panic. The shape ahead growing fast, too fast. You stomp the brake and wrench the wheel just in time to avoid rear-ending the truck in front. Tires screech. The frame bucks. You lurch forward, forehead smacking the steering wheel. teeth clacking hard enough to bite your tongue. You sit there, heart pounding, breath shallow. You glance around, confused. You don't remember slowing down. Don't remember falling asleep. But you did. And next time, you might not wake up in time. You're back on the road. The sun is low behind you. The heat finally easing, and for the first time in days, you almost feel human again. The convoy moves smoothly, engines rumbling in rhythm. The sky a soft wash of pink and gold. You can breathe without coughing. The truck hasn't broken down yet. The road, while pitted and dusty, is holding together. You even manage to choke down a biscuit and a few sips of water without retching. For a dangerous, fleeting moment, you let yourself believe this run might actually be easy. Not safe. Nothing safe, but tolerable. You hum tunelessly under your breath, something half remembered from before the war. The driver ahead waves lazily out his window. Not a warning, just a bored gesture. You wave back. It's been quiet for too long. Part of you knows that, but you ignore the feeling. You want to believe the worst has passed, that you're just hauling crates through a bad sunset in a quiet stretch of nowhere. That maybe, just maybe, you'll make it to the depot without anything going wrong. Then the sky changes. Not slowly, not with warning. It just changes. One moment it's open and peaceful. The next, it's screaming. You hear it before you see it. A deep, low hum that sharpens into a shriek. Too loud to be wind. Too fast to be anything on the ground. Then come the shadows, long, jagged, and wrong. You look up just in time to see the black belly of a dive bomber banking overhead. Its underside painted with a symbol you've learned to associate with very bad things. You slam your foot down and wrench the wheel, but there's nowhere to go. You're exposed. You were always exposed. The first bomb hits somewhere ahead. The shockwave ripples through the earth, lifting your front wheels off the ground. Your teeth slam together. Your chest knocks against the wheel. A second explosion follows, closer, sharper. You hear screaming, but it's distant, drowned out by engine roar and your own hammering pulse. You duck instinctively, though you know it's useless. You have no armor, no canopy, just a thin sheet of rusted metal between you and everything falling from the sky. You're not a target. Not really. You're an afterthought. But that doesn't make you safe. It makes you more vulnerable, because you're not important enough to protect. The orders are simple. Do not stop. Do not get out. Do not engage. The cargo matters more than you do, even if that cargo is socks. Movement catches your eye in the hills to your right. Something glints. Then, crack, the windshield spiders. You hear a ping, a hiss, and realize someone's shooting at you. Not from a plane this time, from the ground. A sniper, maybe two. You duck again, clutching the wheel like it might offer divine protection. Bullets slap into the side panels. One punches through the passenger door and shreds the seat beside you. You don't flinch anymore. You're too tired to flinch. You just keep driving. There's shouting on the radio, but the signal's scrambled, half cut by static and screams. Someone calls out a location, then cuts off midword. You hear mine, and then nothing. Your eyes scan the road ahead, but it all looks the same. Dust, rock, faint tire grooves from the truck ahead. You keep your wheels in the ruts like you were trained, praying the last guy didn't get it wrong. Then the truck ahead of you jerks violently. One moment it's fine. The next, it lifts at an angle, one side ballooning upward as the wheel disappears in a column of dust and flame. The sound is deafening. A flash. Then the stench. Burnt rubber, oil, flesh. The cab splits like an overripe fruit. Debris rains down. The rear axle skids sideways. Then the whole thing crumples. You swerve barely in time. Tires kicking up gravel. A piece of twisted metal bounces off your hood. You're breathing too hard. Your hands are slick on the wheel. You feel something warm on your cheek and realize you've been cut. You don't remember when. Your ears are ringing. You can't hear the engine anymore. You're not even sure it's running. You just know you're still moving. And still, no one stops. Trucks behind you pull wide around the wreck. Engines whining. No one gets out. No one checks. No one even looks for long. The only rule is keep moving. Because if you stop, you become the next wreck on the side of the road. You become another black smear of burnt rubber and blood. You become a problem someone else is told not to think about. You pass close enough to see the cab, what's left of it. The front is just gone. The rest is mangled, burning, wheels still spinning slightly. You catch a glimpse of a boot, torn from the leg, caught in the gear housing. A gloved hand protrudes from under the wreckage, unmoving. It takes you a second to realize it's someone you knew. Not well, not closely, but enough to recognize the patch on his sleeve. Enough to know you'd nodded to him that morning. You think about stopping, just for a second, just long enough to check. But there's shouting behind you now, horns blaring. You feel the vibration of another truck coming fast. There's no room to pull over, no time to turn around. And even if there was, what would you do? There's nothing to save, nothing to carry, nothing left but parts. So you keep going. The road stretches ahead, blurry with smoke. The sky above is still alive with engine noise. Somewhere behind you, more shells are falling. You don't look back. You grip the wheel tighter and lean forward, teeth clenched, jaw locked, eyes stinging from dust and sweat and something else that doesn't need a name. You keep moving because you were told to, because there's no alternative, because the sky hates you too. You drive for hours after the ambush, though time has lost all meaning. The road keeps going. The noise keeps fading. The dust settles eventually, but your hands don't stop shaking. You try to replay the moment, where the sniper was, how close the blast came, who didn't make it out. But your brain won't hold the pieces together anymore. It drops them one by one, like bolts from a shaking hand. When the convoy stops for the night, you don't get out. You stay in the cab, eyes open, heart thudding like the engine used to. You stare at the inside of the windshield until morning. And when someone knocks to say it's time to move, you nod and shift into gear. That run wasn't your last, but it was the last one that felt like anything. After that, it all blurred. Miles, assignments, faces, cargo stamped urgent but never explained. Somewhere between one depot and the next, the sky went quiet and the shells stopped falling. Not because peace had arrived, just because you weren't worth aiming at anymore. You'd survived. Technically. Eventually, you learn the war is over. Not because anyone told you. Not because there was a ceremony or a final trumpet blast or a neat little line drawn under it all. You just wake up one morning to a cold breakfast and a different tone in your officer's voice. Not lighter, just quieter. There's no more screaming, no more rush, just a vague sense of waiting. You ask what comes next. Nobody seems to know. You still have a truck. You still have cargo. So you drive. You've been driving for nearly 3 years now. France, Burma, Russia, wherever they needed someone who didn't flinch when the brakes failed. Peace, it turns out, is just war with less noise. The bullets stop flying, but the work doesn't. If anything, it gets worse. Now you're hauling building supplies instead of ammunition. Transporting crates of food nobody packed properly. Delivering mail to outposts that haven't been told the fighting's over. The roads are still cratered. The bridges are still out. The trucks are still falling apart. You still sleep in the dirt. The only difference is you're not being actively hunted, which doesn't mean you're safe. It just means your death would be an accident now instead of a statistic. You keep driving for weeks, then months. Some units go home. The lucky ones. The ones who knew someone, or had the right kind of job, or didn't look too broken. But drivers? Drivers stay. Somebody has to carry the crates. Somebody has to make sure the wheels don't stop turning. You were never here for glory, just momentum. The faces around you start changing. Some are new recruits shipped in too late to see action. Others are leftovers like you, too damaged to redeploy, but not damaged enough to discharge. You stop learning names. Stop asking where they're from. They look at you like a ghost, like someone who's seen the thing they've only heard about. They want stories. They want adventure. You give them silence. You're too tired to offer anything else. Civilians start showing up. Journalists, clerks, people in clean uniforms that smell like soap. They ask polite questions about how it all went, then look disappointed when your answers aren't about heroism or decisive battles. They want tales of firefights, of close calls and noble sacrifices, not fuel manifests, not frostbite, not the way a brake line snaps in -20 and sends a man off a cliff without even a scream. They want noise and drama. You give them mud and gears and silence. They stop asking. There's no parade. Not for you. Parades are for the infantry, for the aces, for the units with flags and songs. You don't have a flag. You don't even have a proper insignia. There's no song about the guy who changed his own oil with a bent spoon and slept beneath his truck to stay out of the rain. No medals for delivering bandages or hauling 6 tons of boots across France. No mention in the dispatches for the man who kept the fuel flowing, who drove through machine gun fire with a truck full of tires. What you get is paperwork. A clipboard shoved into your hands. A discharge form with half your name spelled wrong. A handshake from a man who doesn't know you and doesn't care to. They tell you to return your gear. The boots you've worn through. The jacket that still smells like smoke. The dog tags that hang from your neck like a weight. You ask what happens next. They shrug. That's someone else's problem. You leave the motor pool the same way you entered it. Unnoticed. No salute. No fanfare. Just the sound of engines idling and a dozen men shouting over each other about schedules, fuel loads, and broken axles. You pass your truck on the way out. Not the same one that was lost somewhere outside Minsk, but a truck just like it. Same dented hood, same cracked windshield, same aura of barely contained resentment. A younger man is climbing into the driver's seat. He doesn't look at you. You don't blame him. You find a train headed west. It's crowded, loud, full of people who talk too much. They laugh about things that aren't funny. They complain about the food, the seats, the smell. You stare out the window and try not to listen. You've forgotten how to be around people who weren't born from the same misery. You can't join their conversations. Can't smile at their jokes. You still twitch at loud noises. Still flinch when the brakes squeal. When you arrive, the city looks the same as you left it, just older. The buildings are all still standing. The sidewalks are still cracked. The signs haven't changed. But everything feels smaller now. The streets are too narrow. The houses too fragile. The people too loud. You walk through it like a ghost. Feet blistered in your issued boots. Shoulders hunched from months of bad posture and bad roads. Nobody greets you. Nobody's waiting. You never sent letters, and nobody thought to ask where you'd gone. You're just another face in a long line of returning men, most of whom blend back into the world like ink into water. You try to do the same, but the world has no place for truck drivers who've only ever known how to keep moving. You try to find work. It's harder than you expected. Nobody wants a man who lists convoy duty under experience. You don't have references, don't have skills that translate. You know how to drive something that barely works through terrain that barely exists. You know how to ration coffee grounds and filter water through a sock. You know how to sleep sitting up and how to wake up fast when an engine noise doesn't sound right. Nobody's hiring for that. You get a room. Small, cheap, cold. You hang your coat by the door. It still smells like diesel. You sit on the bed and stare at your hands. They shake a little. You think they always will. You cough into a rag and check for blood. Just a habit now. There's nothing left in your lungs. Just dust. And memory. Your discharge papers are tucked in your bag, along with a canteen you forgot to return and a letter you never sent. You read the papers again. They don't say much. Just your name, your rank, and the word complete. That's all your war amounted to. One word. You lie down. The bed's too soft. You miss the sound of engines, the hard curve of a wheel beneath your hands, the angry clatter of bolts in an overworked chassis. You miss the road, even if it never missed you. You live longer than you expected. Not well, but long. Your back never recovers. Your knees give out early. The cough lingers for decades, though the doctors say your lungs are clear. You never marry. Never see the point. Most of your post-war years are spent behind the wheel, delivery trucks mostly. It's what you know. The machines are better, but the feeling's the same. Long roads, late hours, nobody to talk to but the hum of the engine and the sound of your own breath. Most of your old convoy dies before you do. A few in peacetime accidents, blown tires on wet roads, brake failures on steep hills. The kind of deaths that get 3 lines in the local paper. A few from the war that never really ended. The frostbitten toes that turned gangrenous. The lungs that collapsed years later. The dreams that curdled into screams. You never see any of them again. You stop expecting to. You often wonder how many are buried under the wrong name, or no name at all. You don't get visitors toward the end. The neighbors know you as the quiet one. The old man with the limp who sits on the porch in a threadbare coat, even in summer. A few offer help once. You turn them down. You don't need much. You learned how to do without a long time ago. You still eat too little, sleep too little, move slowly. You listen to the trucks on the nearby highway and sometimes close your eyes, just for a moment, imagining the routes they're on, the weight they carry, the distance left to go. You die in winter, in your sleep, alone, no pain, no sound, just cold air in your lungs and tired bones finally giving out. Nobody finds you for 2 days. When they do, it's quiet. Just an unanswered knock, a welfare check, a report filed. There isn't much in the apartment. A pair of worn boots, a patched coat, a drawer full of rusted tools, some old rations you'd never quite stopped stocking. In the back of a closet, someone finds a satchel. Inside, a faded map, stained with oil and time. A black and white photograph of a convoy, faces blurred, trucks barely visible through dust. A medal with no name engraved on it. The funeral is small. A few chairs. A chaplain who never knew you. A cold wind cutting through a half-empty cemetery. They get your branch of service right. Not much else. The eulogy is brief. It speaks of sacrifice, of duty, of quiet strength. All the usual words. But nothing about the truck. Nothing about frost-bitten fingers wrapped around a frozen steering wheel. Nothing about the engine fires, the tire blowouts, the nights spent shivering under the chassis, too cold to dream. Nobody tells the story of how you kept a convoy moving through shellfire with only one functioning gear. Nobody remembers the names of the drivers who disappeared along the Burma Road, or the ones buried in shallow ditches outside Stalingrad, or the ones who drowned in swamps near Bastogne when their wheels slid just a little too far left. Nobody mentions that your war never had a beginning or an end, just a direction, forward. You never expected to be remembered. That wasn't bitterness, just fact. You weren't the kind of man who got statues. You were the kind who kept things moving so someone else could win the war. You drove through rain, through sleet, through mud that reached your knees and ice that sealed your boots to the pedals. You drove through bombing runs, through sniper fire, through curves with no guardrails and no brakes. You drove when the maps were wrong, when the engines smoked, when your lungs bled. You drove when nobody else could. And when it was over, you were quietly discharged, quietly forgotten, quietly replaced. You drove through mud, through fire, through hell. And when you were gone, all anyone remembered was that the ammo showed up. Not how, not who, just that it arrived. Somehow. That brings us to the end of tonight's journey. Slow, rattling, and worn thin by time. Like the tires on a truck nobody remembers driving. If you're still awake, thank you for riding through frost, fire, and fatigue with a man built to be forgotten. If you'd like early access to more of these long, quiet descents into overlooked corners of history, ad-free audio of the episodes, or just want to support the show, you'll find the Patreon link below. Feel free to leave a comment with other forgotten pockets of history you'd like explored. For those listening on podcast platforms, ratings and reviews help others discover these stories. Special thanks to our Patreon supporters who make this show possible, including our Chronicler tier patrons Andrew S. and Amanda L. Sleep well.